Thank you very much for being with us. Just had our interview with the Chancellor, Philip Hammond. Newspapers full of stories about potential coups against Theresa May. I mean, is this a week that Labour will be calling a confidence motion?
Well, look, let's take it one step at a time. I mean, that interview that you just had was extraordinary, I thought. The Chancellor really signalling that the deal that they've worked on for nearly 3 years is dead. He also jumped the idea of no deal, yet Mrs May has held on to that from the beginning. I mean, it is a government in which the country can have no confidence. But the main thing is, as he said, and he is right, we are on the edge of a catastrophe. We have to find a way through this quickly. And that is why Labour tomorrow is putting down its resolution suggesting that we have negotiations. Jeremy's already meeting people to see if there is a way forward for Parliament and for the country.
I mean, I know that some people, sort of Conservatives, will be kind of shouting at the screen listening to you to say that we're on the edge of the precipice here, as you say. Why doesn't Labour back a deal then?
Look,
because that's the way to say no deal on the table, isn't it?
The deal is not acceptable to Parliament and it's not popular at all in the country.
So why not?
And there are obvious reasons why. The most obvious one is the problem with the land border in Ireland.
But the backstop would be in Labour's proposal as well.
The difference with our proposal and their proposal is that we would not have a border at any time in Ireland because we'd be part of a long-term customs union negotiated by us with the European Union.
But the deal has a customs union in it as well, doesn't it?
No, not in the way that we envisage it, which is a common customs union expressly tailor-made for Britain, which would mean that there wouldn't be a necessity for a land border in Ireland, and it is that what the problem is.
That is the backstop, isn't it?
The backstop is different in this sense that the backstop which the government's negotiated, we cannot get out of. We are handing over our sovereignty to the European Union. There's no unilateral way out of this for the country.
But that's good for Labour, isn't it, if you want a permanent customs union?
We want a customs union tailor-made for us, which will deliver proper jobs, regional development, and a way forward out of this crisis which protects jobs and also respects the Good Friday Agreement in Ireland. That is a very important achievement for our country in the last 30 years. We don't want to jeopardise it now. Look, the Chancellor himself is sitting here in this very seat a few moments ago, more or less dropping the deal. We have proposed an alternative set of arrangements. We think it's a reasonable way forward, but we're happy to negotiate with others. And Jeremy Corbyn is now leading the conversations to try to find a consensus.
The Chancellor also didn't rule out the idea of a second referendum if it meant, for example, Theresa May's deal passing and then having a public vote to see if that would be acceptable to the public. There was 1 million people, we're told, marching yesterday in support of a second referendum. Why wasn't Jeremy Corbyn there?
Well, he was out campaigning in Morecambe, actually, where the cockle pickers died. And look, the country wants to talk about, for instance, crime. There's rising tide of crime. There are 20,000 less police officers on the streets, and there's great anxiety about the state of the country, apart from Brexit. And Jeremy's out there.
Policy to have a second referendum.
Jeremy is out there leading the country, discussing austerity and all the other things that matter. I was in London yesterday. I was in a series of meetings, but I took a bit of time. I had conversations with people on the march, and what was interesting was there was passion, there was enthusiasm, but above all, there was fear that this government is simply lost. And it's leading the country down a blind alley into a very, very dangerous moment. That was the overwhelming impression I had. It was a lovely crowd, but the job of an alternative government is try to find a way of bringing all the sides together in our country rather than dividing it in the way that the government has on a Brexit, but a Brexit which works for everybody.
I'm interested to know your own views on the second referendum. We spoke about it the last time that you were on the programme. We can have a quick look at what you told us back then. You said, if people feel that a privileged political elite has decided to find a way of reversing the previous referendum, that would cause us some difficulty, and rightly so. Is that still what you think?
It is what I think. And from the beginning, there were some people who, right from the beginning, didn't accept the results of the referendum. They wanted to remain. They wanted to find a way of really reversing the referendum, the original referendum. That isn't Labour's position. Our position is we've accepted the results of the referendum, but we think we are now getting closer and closer to a precipice. And what we said is, if we arrive at a position where it's necessary to prevent either a crash-out deal or a dreadful Tory deal, then at that point we will seek to have a second referendum.
Are you happy about it? Are you happy about it?
I am. Look, I voted for it. Labour put down a resolution, I think it was in January, which included a vote. And by the way, tomorrow we've got another amendment which also includes a second referendum. But
how would you vote then if there was a referendum?
Sorry?
How would you vote if there was a referendum?
I'd vote to remain and reform, but we'd have to see what other options were on the table. And the truth is we are somewhere away from making that decision. Look, we can spend a lot of time discussing process. How will we arrive at a decision? Actually, we should be discussing content. And the content is a deal which can work, which will deliver jobs and a more prosperous country. And we need to reverse austerity and the problems which our country is facing.
Okay, well, let's talk about the content, shall we? Because we just heard as well from the Chancellor that the House of Commons will have an opportunity to express its view and try and find a majority around something next week, potentially through this series of what's been known as indicative votes. So would you vote for the Prime Minister's deal plus a customs union as a compromise?
No, I think the Prime Minister's deal simply doesn't work. And the main problem we have is we've got a long-term relationship in a backstop from which there is no exit. And
but the backstop is the customs union. This is what I'm struggling
The backstop is a customs union, but there is no way out of it into a permanent relationship. We could be locked forever into a situation which is something short of what the people have voted for. And therefore, we don't think that will work. Look, we've made a proposal. It's got 5 aspects to it, and we are putting it down tomorrow night. But equally, our resolution tomorrow in front of the House of Commons suggests that there are a number of options which the House should consider. And I was pleased to see that the Chancellor of the Exchequer saying, actually, he thinks that's where we're going to end up. Look, the point is, Mrs May doesn't have the political skills of negotiation and persuasion and charm which is needed to win the majority of a House where she doesn't have a majority herself. And Jeremy is putting himself in that position, gradually emerging as a national leader, negotiating with Tories, with Liberals, with other parties, trying to find a way out of the mess which we've been led into.
Do you think a different leader of the Conservative Party would make it easier for Labour to do it?
I think whatever happens is entirely up to the Tory party. They've led us into this mess. Remember, it was Mr Cameron and Mr Osborne that had the referendum in the first place and tried to bully the country into a particular decision. And I think, look, the Cabinet has made a mess of this. We need a general election. That's the kind of people's vote we want.
Doesn't sound like someone about to do a deal with the Conservative Party.
We want to create a consensus in the whole country. Part of the problem is a government which has lost its way.
Okay. Jon Trickett, thank you very much.
Thank you.